are you?
Great.
Great. Good to know. And well, obviously you can hear me because, it would be ironic. We're here to talk about communication and you can't hear me. That would be a problem. So my name is Daniele and yeah, we are going to talk in English because this is what I do day in, day out. I talk in English and I work with people in English, with tech experts mainly. Now, let me start with a question. So how many of you work in an international environment? Okay, quite a few. And how many of you use English as their main working language? Okay, there you go. So we know what we're talking about because that's what I do as well. I was not born in an English-speaking country, and I use English. I've used English in all my career, actually, from IT to what I do today with tech experts. And so today, I really want to talk about a couple of things, and I would like to discuss them with you. So invisible bottlenecks. So what is really stopping us from communicating effectively in an international environment? The communication as architecture. We hear a lot about soft skills these days, but I consider communication a key skill, not just a soft skill. And I want to illustrate why communication can be considered infrastructure. We are here in a tech fair, so we're going to talk about communication as a tech infrastructure. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on my framework, the one that's helped me communicate and is helping also the professionals I work with. And finally, I'd like to illustrate how all of this can help you future-proof your career when it comes to working in IT, working in tech. So again, let me ask you another question, right? Have you ever had the solution in your head, but someone else got credit for it? It's happened to me many times. So I follow a meeting, I can understand what people say, I can follow a presentation, then I have a great idea in my mind, but I'm slow. So someone else raises their hand, they say what I wanted to say in an easy, simple, and effective way, and guess what? They take the credit for it. So this is a typical situation in tech, especially with people who are tech experts. And why? Why does this happen? We're going to explore that in a minute, but basically this is what happens in meetings, right? We feel we can contribute to the conversation. We feel we have amazing ideas in our head. And then when we speak, we sound a little bit softer, right? And from my experience, we all study English, right? We study English at school. We are familiar with Duolingo. We have AI these days. We have automatic translations. But really, what happens is not connected with the language that much. There is something else at play. Sure, knowing the language helps, but that situation there, it doesn't only depend on the level of knowledge we have, the vocabulary, the grammar. I consider it like this, right? Again, we are in a tech environment and I mainly work with tech people. So your brain is overloaded, right? This is exactly the problem. Why? Because your brain is doing too many things at the same time. Oh, yeah, you're right. Your brain is doing too many things at the same time. So you're thinking, trying to solve the problem in a meeting, for example. But when we are not native speakers and we need to use English, we add an extra layer, the translation. So we think, if we are Italian, we think in Italian. We have to translate in our head, and then after we can explain things. On top of that, we have to manage perception. We need to manage how the other people see us, but also how we want to appear. So do we want to appear confident? Am I clear enough? Will I use the right words? This is what happens in our brain. And as you can see, our brain is running over capacity, 120% capacity. That's obviously a made up number, but just to show you that this is what happens in our brain and this is the process we go through. So you all know what happens when we run over capability. Something will break, right? And that turns into silence, turns into running around, spinning around in circles, or it turns into something like this. Boom, brain explosion. Not actual explosion, of course, but basically what happens is we freeze, we stop speaking, and we blame ourselves. We say, oh, I don't know English. I can't perform in English. I need to study more. I need to get more grammar. I need to learn more words. But the result is there is no communication, really. So we are there, we are experts, but we don't contribute in the meeting, right? Or, I see it with many people, we start running around, explaining things, using too many words, wanting to appear clever. It is not, obviously, it is not the ideal situation, but this is what happens day in, day out when English is not a first language. Now, let's explain why communication is an asset. I consider communication as infrastructure, right? So as I said, we hear a lot about soft skills these days. But when you call them soft, you immediately have the idea that they are not as important as the hard skill. Well, let me flip the approach. We have AI. Things can speak without us, right? We need to explain things. So how do we do it? With our voice, with our body. We are humans, you know? And in the age of AI, being human means communicating openly, communicating effectively, explaining things clearly to a bot, to a person, to a client. And so this is why I call communication infrastructure. And you can quickly summarize infrastructure as a series of steps. Again, if you are in tech, you understand workflows, right? There's an input, so what comes in my head. There's the thinking process that happens before I can release a message. There's the message itself that gets there. I have the listener with their perception, their bias, their culture. And finally, I have the action, which could be something that follows after my message. So that's linear. That's the ideal infrastructure, which means it's clear signal and we get the ideal outcome, right? But as you can see, we have some problems there. I marked them in red, just to make them clear. There is noise. We are familiar with noise. It could be something in the background when we listen and we want to speak back. It could be our colleagues speaking. It could be the accent. We don't understand someone's accent. It could be broken technology, but also it could be perceived noise. So something that plays in our mind. We are familiar with imposter syndrome, right? So do I really belong here? Wait a second. What if my pronunciation is not clear? What if my words, my choice of words is not clear, right? And that's perceived noise. It's not real noise, but it's very real when it plays in our mind and it tricks us, right? So that's something that we must consider because that noise has an impact on our thinking. It creates ambiguity. It creates uncertainty. It creates unconfidence. One of my clients called it unconfidence, right? Because I don't feel confident. I don't know if it's a real word, by the way, but I just love it and I use it. Unconfident, so which is the opposite of confidence. And it all comes from the noise and the ambiguity. And that generates a biased message. So really, the message is not clear, there is a lot of overthinking going on. We think, okay, maybe, what if I use a third conditional there? Or what if I pick that word? Yes, that word will help me sound clever. But this is overthinking process, which means we are not as effective as we would love to be. And so this has got an impact on our infrastructure, right? And as you well know, if our infrastructure is not coherent, it's not strong, the whole system collapses. In this case, the system is us, by the way. So we don't physically collapse, of course, but we metaphorically collapse, which means we don't speak. Again, back to the imposter syndrome. We think we need more English. We need to study more. I need more grammar. Oh no, that word, it was not correct. And the result is not the one we wanted, right? We generate something called communication latency. So our brain goes into this loading mode, and your ideas arrive too late. And nowadays, in a global market, in a highly competitive market, we simply can't afford that. We can't afford to be late. And again, I've seen it many times with skilled professionals. The overthinkers, they get there late. The not so overthinkers, they get there fast. They get there first, and they get credit for that. So, we eventually get there, but not exactly as we wanted to, right? And we are there sitting, yes, I should have said, I should have told, I should have used. But regret doesn't really get us anywhere in a global market, in a highly specialized tech world. And so we are sitting there, waiting and thinking and overthinking and replaying the meeting in our head. How many times? Again, be honest. How many times has this happened to you? Yeah? So we're sitting there. The meeting went not so well. We replayed it in our head, and then it looks perfect 10 minutes later, right? So perfection 10 minutes after the meeting is pointless. There's a visible and hidden cost there, right? It impacts promotion. In an international market, there's no promotion without effective communication. And there's no effective communication without confident English. Leadership. So one of the main qualities of a good leader is communication, clear and effective communication in English. Well, if you want to be a global leader, of course. Trust. Our colleagues, do they trust us? Our clients, do they trust us? And finally, visibility. We all know these days it's not enough to do the work. We also need to show how we do it. Is it all bleak and doom? Well, of course not. There is a solution. And I call it hack. We are in tech, so we want to hack our English. We want to hack our communication. Hack is 4 words: hone, action, collaboration, and kudos. This is the system that has helped me improve my communication. And this is the system I use with my clients to get them there. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes to analyze the 4 parts of the hack framework that I created to help skilled professionals sound as senior and as expert as they really are. Hone. H stands for hone. So we perfect the toolkit. If you're familiar with coding, it's like moving from messy code to refactored code, right? We have structure. We build structure to simplify our language, get to the point first, and then adding details later. One thing that we think we want to impress our audience, so we use crazy words and we get lost mid-sentence. But in reality, we want to lead with a point, ideally 1 sentence, 1 idea, and then we connect them. So hone is to build the toolkit that we need to communicate well. That doesn't work without action. So getting into action means, well, shipping before your product is ready, right? I know it sounds scary, but getting into action means learning some language, putting ourselves out there, recording ourselves, for example, audio or video, rewatching it, studying how we use our voice. Some say that our voice is a musical instrument. So how do we use it? We use all the colors, all the nuances of our voice. And that's the only way you can evaluate it is if you record yourself and you iterate. Collaboration. So don't do it alone. We live in an interconnected world. There are communities. You can volunteer to speak at work. You can join servers on Discord, for example, right? Even AI, if you really want, you can use AI to build speech, to use with teleprompters, to get used to speaking in front of a camera. That's the fastest way to improvement. And finally, you need to measure all of it. So the kudos part. Give yourself some kudos for the effort, right? So monitor your progress and celebrate your effort. So these 4 parts of the hack framework, they work together really to elevate your communication by using a structured and measurable system, considering communication as a whole, not just single parts taken singularly. I use myself as a use case, right? That's something that I used to say, maybe not in the exact word, but this is something that I also hear day in, day out. So I hate what it's called career stagnation, because I wanted to perfect my English in an international environment. I was working in Dublin, Ireland. And, I was obsessed with getting certified before I could plan to be in a meeting, before I could apply for new positions. But the reality is, when I started considering my communication as a whole, then that happened. I started traveling around Europe, meeting international clients, leading teams in Ireland, in Romania, and, working with communications, because this is what I now love doing. So really, we have 2 options, right? You can wait until your English is perfect and you have everything you think you need for your communication, or you can start speaking now and improve. I think by now you know which options I prefer, but obviously I leave it to you, right? Just, don't think too much, because opportunities will pass by and you will simply miss opportunities. So my point is, do not overthink. Your code, if you're in tech, your code is not your bottleneck. And in tech, the smartest people don't always win, but the clearest ones do. This is what I've learned the hard way, and this is what I see with skilled professionals every day in the work I do. So when you go back to your work, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, I don't know, but when you go back to the office, remember, accept the latency. It's there. You can't remove it right away. It's impossible. Try to reduce the cognitive load. So find some ways to simplify your message. Do not overthink. Lead with a point. Start 1 sentence, 1 idea. Simplify your language. And most important is ship before it's perfect. The world, the tech world, needs your ideas, your voice, not your perfect grammar, right? So thank you very much for listening, for being here with me. And I appreciate your presence and you listening to me. This is me, same face. And these are my contacts. The QR code takes you to my website, where you can find resources and some extra ideas to challenge yourself if you're interested, and to discover new ways to challenge your speaking and to learn how to speak. And of course, we're here. So I am down the hall, towards the back of the hall, if you want to come and visit me, if you want to chat. And I'll be happy to meet some familiar faces. Thank you very much.